Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Wilds talk. Today we're talking about the weapons and the state of them in Title Update 2.5 or the August patch. Obviously in Title Update 2 itself, many weapons had some relevant changes, but it was way more aggressive in the August patch itself, where nearly every weapon had some kind of relevant change, many of which literal damage increases and changes, new moveset options, and then some the subtler stuff, like your longsword actually having more reliable countering with the spirit slashes. How has this all turned out? Have they achieved what they were aiming for and what we were hoping for? We're going to take a look at some of the best runs that exist right now for the weapons that had these relevant changes, and just kind of discuss where they're at and maybe what that means. We begin with Greatsword here, which has a pretty phenomenal showing with a 3 minute and 47 second clear for a 9.5 Seragios. Pretty much any weapon that is under 4 minutes for some of the hardest stuff in the game, I think is doing unbelievably good and is in a fantastic position. So obviously, Greatsword nicely fits into that. Would it have fit here though without the surprising August changes that I wasn't expecting for the weapon? The thing about Greatsword is it's been towards like 5th place or maybe even higher for a lot of the rankings throughout Wilds. So seeing buffs to it wasn't something I was expecting. Admittedly, the making it easier to chain into a tackle from different combos isn't really going to massively improve the output. Things like leaping wide slash chaining faster into a side blow, strong wide slash now chaining faster into true charge slash. That matters a lot more. But most importantly here is the small increases to raw damage and slightly bigger increases for the element scaling. Raw was increased for a lot of attacks, most importantly ever so slightly for true charge slash. And then the element scaling was noticeably increased for strong charge slash, strong wide slash, and again the true charge slash. The results speak for themselves then. Sub 4 minute, it easily puts Greatsword into one of the top weapons where it was already doing well. So the conclusion on Greatsword for me is that it's absolutely fantastic. Next we have Longsword, which definitely didn't have a lot of changes, but it definitely didn't need them. In Title Update 2, they made some changes to try to address the whole Spirit Blade 1, Crimson 1 infinite combo stuff, but they did not achieve what maybe they set out to do. Now, they're just better options if you do actually go into them, but they still don't compete with Spirit Blade 1, Crimson 1 infinite combo, obviously. What is better though, and has been asked for the whole duration of Wilds, is improved input experience for this weapon in particular. It's an issue for Wilds and weapons as a whole that there is some input and action delay occasionally. And I think you feel it more with something like Longsword that's all about specific counter gameplay. So not only have they addressed the input and action issues, but they've also extended the window that allows for Spirit Slash to land. So the counter itself is actually easier to land, and it's now more reliable. Longsword was already kind of a top 3 weapon, arguably up there for sure. This just makes it more reliable and actually easier to pilot, making more things slightly more possible. This run with a 3 minute and 30 second clear on a 9.5 Seragios shows that. So Longsword is also one of the top weapons undeniably. Next then we look at Sword and Shield, which basically had one change that had a bit more meaning behind it than it first appears. Counter slash raw damage was increased, and that was it in the August update. But the purpose behind this is actually important. As they said in their guild report about this topic, they want to make the weapons easier to handle for beginners, so that the moveset can reach a certain threshold of output without specific actions. So when someone's maximizing the weapon, obviously they're going to get greater output, but they want the base level to be higher. With Sword and Shield, certain actions were dealing too much damage in relation to how easy they are to use though. So they nerfed a few things about it in Title Update 2. The August update was about walking that back a bit, because when they nerfed guard slash, counter slash basically stopped being used. So what they've done is improved the reward that you have behind the counter slash, even though the guard slash itself isn't improved since Title Update 2. So the reward's a lot higher. What we're seeing in this footage is incredible use of the perfect rush though, with the ability to dash backwards and avoid attacks, ignore rolls, that kind of thing, and maximize its output. This run is a 4 minute and 45 second clear against a 9.5 Ray Down, where they're not using a palico, they're not using mantles, they're not using traps. So it's easy to say that roughly a 4 or sub 4 is possible in this context with using all the tools available. And by maximizing the backstep, they're able to ignore and avoid a lot of attacks, which is really cool. And yes, against certain attacks, they are using guard slash, which is being followed up by the counter slash. So the change that they were aiming for is seeing play by speedrunners. So that's a great result for the weapon, I would say. Next up we have the funny one, dual blades, which was already a top performing weapon thanks to the title update 2 changes, where overall the weapon is performing incredibly, and we're starting to see that element benefit actually come into play against Lagarcus, against Sergios, and other monsters that are susceptible to it. The general experience playing dual blades is so much better though, thanks to the ability to go into Blade Dance 2 and then 3 after a perfect evade. Though admittedly you still want to do a lot of demon flurrying because it's just goddamn so efficient. But a big change that we got in August was specifically the new Turning Tide change, the Turning Tide drill. So now we don't have to go down the spine when using the focus strike. We can choose to end where the wound started, like the head, the leg, or an optimal hit location where we opened the wound in the first place. This means we're able to lean more into using the focus strike in normal gameplay, which is a big deal because it's going to generate demon gauge and let us recover stamina at the same time, which is the only way to do that. Not to mention, they also made it so the perfect evade extends the duration of demon boost mode, which is just out of nowhere, sure, amazing. Title update 2 buffed the movement speed you get from demon mode, and then August's update did the same thing, so it's even faster. And then yeah, they also made the window for perfect evading ever so slightly better, so you could compare it to like having one free evade window in the kit of dual blades, just added in. The output's doing great since title update 2. The moveset options are better, and that's showing. In the August update, your moveset options are again even better, and the general flow of the gameplay and managing the different systems is also easier. So dual blades has achieved a top spot in these rankings multiple times now, and is easily a top weapon also. As shown in this gameplay against the 9-5 of duna, where they're clearing it in just over 3 minutes. Ridiculous. Next up then we have Hunting Horn. Let's just look at the August changes in specific. When performing a hilt stab, the user will no longer be knocked back if the action is timed correctly with the monster's attack. You could compare that to a greatsword using the tackle to ignore an attack. You can then combo into the hilt stab from a focus strike, an echo bubble, special performance, encore, or just an evade. So there's lots of ways to smoothly go into it, but not every attack is possible. They also made it easier to apply echo bubbles again in this update, meaning echo bubble can be chained into from an offset, from the resounding melody, or an encore now. In Title Update 2, they made the hit detection, the overall hitbox of Echo Bubble, bigger and better, and gave you new ways to put them down too. It's important because you're trying to set up the triple, maximize that output, keep the monster within all three ideally. This allows you with the hilt stab to kind of hold position and go toe to toe a bit more, holding them in the Echo Bubbles, which have become more reliable and easier to put down. This run against a tempered Sergios was a 4-minute and 42-second clear, and based on the other rankings, this kind of puts Hunting Horn somewhere in the middle of the pack, which by the way, compared to being basically at the back of the pack for all of the rankings so far, until recently, it's a massive step forward for the weapon. Even if it's not like a sub 4 minute, top 5 or whatever, it's doing so much better these days. Now, speaking of another weapon with big changes, we have the Lance. The Lance had the most changes to its toolkit, many of which were just straight up damage increase, raw, element, and new ways to chain into different attacks as well. It's a massive list of attacks that have been improved, and in our testing we found that it's around the 30% damage buff overall. We're talking about the weapon with the lowest damage output in the game, and it became more and more obvious weapon ranking after weapon ranking, title update after title update. Here we have a 9-5 Sergios with a clear that is a 5-minute and 43-second clear. So it's not sub 5 and it's certainly not sub 4. But the difference here is that it may have been something like a 7 or 8 minute clear before, which is a colossal difference, guys. Lance remains obviously not the top output weapon and definitely remains near to the back of the pack for what's possible. But it's become much stronger with these updates, and your average player is gonna feel it. Nearly every aspect of the kit is stronger or smoother and easier to engage with. It just hasn't been slingshotted like to the middle of the pack like Hunting Horn, but at the same time, it's so much better than it was blatantly. Could it receive more output increases in the future or other impactful changes like in Title Update 3 or maybe beyond? Yes, I think so based on these results. But yeah, it's a lot better. Next up for relevant changes though, we got to talk about Charge Blade, where they kind of made some choices they're not happy with. The change that came in August is improved raw damage for ED1, ED2, where you're using the chainsaw of the Savage Axe. The raw damage from multi-hit attacks with power axe mode has been increased, so those are the individual ticks of the chainsaw. Let's look at what they said in Guild Report 17 about Charge Blade. In Title Update 2, we aim to balance amped element discharge so that it could offer another reliable source of damage beyond multi-hit attacks in axe mode. Basically, everyone in the mother playing Charge Blade was going into the axe mode, staying there, and using the chainsaw combo of ED1 and ED2 over and over. Their goal was to give you new options, with SAD and certainly amped element discharge being encouraged. In Title Update 2, everyone stopped using ED1, ED2 because they nerfed them, and with amped element discharge being so good, and the follow-up feeling great, it created a new loop, the morph loop or the transform loop, where the player is sword and shield, doing a shield thrust, going into amped element discharge through that transformation, doing the follow-up, going back to sword and shield, and then repeating that over and over and over permanently. So they basically got rid of the ED1, ED2 combo that we're just always doing and replaced it with amped into follow-up into infinite combo of that. So rather than expanding what we're doing, it basically just changed it to 2 other attacks, as they acknowledge. So to address that, they revisited the adjustments and made it so increased damage via enhanced files is reflected in Power Axe mode, and then made it easier to maintain high damage output while keeping Power Axe mode active, making ED1 and ED2 more valuable again. However, the chainsaw ticks are still not what they were before Title Update 2. How is this played in the gameplay we're looking at, where we have a 3 minute and 41 second clear for Seragios? Well, for one, that's easy sub 4, with potential of say a 3:30, which is incredible, putting Charge Blade up there in the top 5 easily. But we're definitely still seeing that combo. Sword and shield, into the transformation to AD, into the follow-up, back into sword and shield, into the shield thrust, into the amped. To be fair, I think this feels amazing. I'm really enjoying doing it. But have they truly achieved a return to some ED1, ED2 gameplay? It's hard to say. In different runs, I am seeing it used in a neutral style gameplay, but any target that is particularly element vulnerable, like the legs of Seragios here, then yeah, going for amped in the follow-up just is better, it would seem. It does make me wonder whether we'll see some future changes, where they again further encourage some chainsaw style gameplay instead of AD into the follow-up and repeat. But irrelevant of what they do, this feels fresh and new and good for me, and by God, is it effective? Clearly. Next up, we talk about Insect Glaive, which did get some big changes or relevant listing of changes in the August update. They made it slightly easier to trigger the offset attack, which is still pretty hard to be fair. The invulnerability window when vaulting backwards is better. Increase the distance when vaulting backwards when you have evade extender. The raw damage for strong reaping slash and dodge slash is better, where the raw and element for strong double slash and tornado slash also increased. Then they fixed a lot of different issues and hit detection stuff. Overall, this is a small push in the correct direction in my opinion, to stop the essence build, essence dump, repeat forever style of gameplay this weapon currently has. Popularity of this weapon definitely seems to be down, as some of the best runners simply aren't putting out runs anymore. The Insect Glaive definitely has issues with this loop as well, where it goes up and through a target, and against a good target like Ray Dow here, the results are incredible. This is a 3 minute on the dot clear of a 9-5 Ray. That's incredible. Insect Glaive has always been a top weapon throughout Wilds' life in this form since release, and remains so. It just falls off heavily when you come across a monster that doesn't let you go up into a good hitbox. So more encouragement for everything outside of the essence dump attack is the way to go in my opinion. Hopefully we see further changes, but that doesn't mean the weapon's weak. It's obviously very strong. Lastly, that brings us to the bowguns. Let's start with light bowgun, where they've increased the general experience for element and other ammo types like exhaust ammo, poison ammo, paralysis, and sleep, where they've increased recovery speed for your rapid fire gauge, where they've straight up improved the raw of adhesive ammo and wyvern blast, as well as reload speed for certain attacks. Mainly though, you're going to see improvements for pierce and element, where raw and element scaling for all kinds of element ammo is better, and the rapid fire gauge consumption is down, and the generation of the rapid fire gauge itself is up when using pierce ammo. This shows in a run like this against a 9-5 or duna, it's a sub 4 with a 351 clear. So anywhere where element's going to be relevant and you can hit a good hit zone, it's going to really show. Monsters like Zoshia and Gore, especially where you're able to hit their wing arms and get immense value there where melees just can't reach. Light bowgun finds itself in a strong position where it has been for a while. And if you played light bowgun at Title Update 2, you're going to notice it feels a lot better again after they kind of nerfed stuff too much, as they say. So this August update has been a pretty good swift recovery from that. When it comes to heavy bowgun though, it is interesting what we're seeing. For the changes in the August update, Wyvern Blast Ignition and Wyvern Counter Ignition, the raw damage for that is up, as well as the scaling for Wyvern Blast Ignition and Counter. They increased the recovery speed of Ignition Gauge when using different kinds of ammo, and they made the Focus Blast Wyvern Howl, the Focus Strike, easier to land. Importantly, chaining into a guard after firing spread ammo is faster, and the amount of Ignition Gauge recovered when using Pierce ammo is also increased. In reference to this, they say they wanted to give hunters a wider array of ammo options, which I think is really important for the weapon and what's necessary and needed right now. What we're looking at here is a 9.5 tempered Seragios using spread with a 4-minute and 28-second clear. So not quite sub 4, but it's definitely up there, putting it towards, say, middle of the pack, and a much better result for the weapon on average, where it was a lot lower. That change where you can chain into a guard after firing spread ammo is awesome, but from looking at different runs, I'm not seeing like a ton of different ammo types being used, and I still think they could do more to encourage that concept. But yeah, that covers the bigger changes for the different weapons and how I think it's kind of ended up based on what we're seeing. Lance has no sub 5-minute clear right now, but it's definitely been pushed forward from what it would have been, and I think it's in a much better position for your average player. Hunting Horn has achieved much better times at average too, and finds itself nicely in the middle of weapon power, at least on average, which is great. Light Bowgun continues to beat out Heavy Bowgun for output, finding itself in a super strong position again, where Heavy Bowgun is doing a lot of work with spread and more aggressive up close playstyle. But again, I think it deserves more varied ammo options that see more common use. The rest of the weapons, I feel they're at incredible points now, like really good, and hopefully we see further changes for other weapons that kind of hit like this. But overall, it's a big thumbs up for the August update. But yeah, that's been my overview. I hope you found that interesting or useful. Until next time, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.